Hello everybody and welcome back to Aero. This is Zaid and today I'll be talking about VFR and IFR conditions. When you first start flying, one of the most challenging concepts to pin down is the difference between IFR versus VFR. VFR stands for Visual Flight Rules and IFR stands for Instrument Flight Rules. Both VFR and IFR are two different sets of rules for piloting an aircraft. Pilots use these terms in all sorts of ways, from the type of airplane they are operating to the weather at the airport. Today in this video, I'll break down exactly what these terms mean and why they are such an important part of flying. So let us begin with our discussion. Visual flight rules. These are the set of rules under which a pilot operates an aircraft in weather conditions, generally clear enough to allow the pilot to see where the aircraft is going. That is, the pilot relies on his own eyes to reach his destination when he is flying on VFR. Instrument Flight Rule is another set of regulations governing all the aspects of civil aviation aircraft operations that depends upon flying by reference to the instruments in the flight deck, and navigation is accomplished by reference to electronic signals. That is, if a pilot is helped by an aircraft instrument, he is flying on IFR. So what is the most important thing to fly with visual confirmation of the route? Well, the answer is weather conditions. A weather condition in which a pilot can fly visually without the help of navigation aids are called visual meteorological conditions. The pilot must be able to operate the aircraft with visual reference to the ground and by visually avoiding obstructions and other aircraft. Specifically, the weather must be better than basic VFR weather minima. In aviation, VMC is an aviation flight category in which the VFR is permitted. That is a condition in which pilots have sufficient visibility to fly the aircraft, maintaining visual separation from terrain and other aircraft. So another question comes here is, what are those conditions where the weather can be called VMC? Well, when an aircraft is flying at an altitude of flight level 100 or above, which is equivalent to 3000 meters, the aircraft must be 1500 meters horizontally and 300 meters vertically away from the clouds, and the flight visibility must be maintained at least 8 kilometers. And when the aircraft is flying at an altitude of less than flight level 100, the aircraft must be 600 meters horizontally and 300 meters vertically away from the clouds, and the flight visibility must be maintained of at least 5 kilometers. Therefore, pilots must not fly if these conditions are not met. If they are already flying and these conditions are hindered, they must change their flight path. Moreover, an aircraft cannot land or enter by VFR at an airport control zone if the airport's official cloud base is 450 meters and ground visibility is at least 5 kilometers. VFR requires a pilot to be able to see outside the cockpit, to control the aircraft's altitude, navigate and avoid obstacles and other aircraft. Using the VMC may vary as per the jurisdictions and also by the airspace in which the aircraft is operating. In some countries, VFR flight is permitted at night and is known as night VFR. This is generally permitted only under more restrictive conditions, such as maintaining minimum safe altitudes. So minimum safe altitudes that must be followed for VFR is as follows. An aircraft must maintain an altitude of 1000 feet or more from the highest obstacle within a 600 meter radius in a densely populated area. And in other areas, an aircraft must maintain an altitude of 500 feet or more from the surface within the radius of 600 meters. If these minimum safety altitudes are ignored, VFR is prohibited. Apart from these, VFR is prohibited for flying between sunsets or sunrise, transonic or supersonic flights, and flying over 20,000 feet. Considering that visual condition is the most important thing in VFR, you can understand why a pilot can't do VFR at night. Now, IFR minimizes the visual judgment of the pilots and relies on the aircraft instruments such as airspeed indicator, altimeter and heading indicator. IFR is more complex than VFR. So, why do pilots fly IFR? It is just because they can be more prepared for danger. With IFR, you can fly long distances in bad weather and even at night. Hence, IFR is much safer than VFR. Also, IFR permits an aircraft to operate in the instrument meteorological conditions, which is essentially any weather condition less than VMC, but in which the aircraft can still operate safely. IMC and VMC are mutually exclusive. The boundary criteria between VMC and IMC is known as VMC minima. VMC minima tends to be stricter in controlled airspace, where there is increased air traffic. Therefore, greater visibility and cloud clearance is desirable. This means that IFR flights should be equipped with instruments and navigational systems for the flight path. Now, aircraft are divided into different categories depending upon their performance and equipped instruments, such as Category 1, Category 2 and Category 3. And at each airport, the weather minimum is set differently depending upon the aircraft category. So some aircraft can take off and land at different airports while others cannot. Therefore, pilots are diverted to alternate airports or to go around until the weather improves. This is why pilots flying IFR should be able to handle various guidance systems and navigation equipment and understand the charts of the instrument flight. So what should be the minimum safety altitude for IFR flight? Well, the minimum safety altitude is just the same as the VFR flights. But if it is not set accordingly, the aircraft must maintain an altitude of 2000 feet within the radius of 8 km from the highest obstacle on the ground. And in other areas, aircraft must maintain 1000 feet or more within the radius of 8 km from the surface. The pilot must decide how to fly before the flight and submit it in the flight plan. Air traffic controller monitors all the aircraft regardless of the way of its flight. And in VFR, pilot do refers to the aircraft instruments, and even in IFR, pilots visually check the runway and flight path. Although the details are different, but the basic principles for the flight to follow are same. And neither VFR nor IFR is superior. So I hope that you understood the basic difference between IFR and VFR. If you find this information helpful, share it with your friends. Hit the like button and do subscribe to our channel. Keep learning, keep practicing.